Evening, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earth Watch on Friday, January 26, 2024 on our planet. Hope you're all well. You know what day it is today, folks? It's the 324th anniversary of the great megathrust earthquake of the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which was January 26, the year 1700, which was also during the Maunder minimum, the last grand solar minimum period. So during grand solar minimum periods, that's when we have our catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So again, January 26, 1700, estimated to be at least a 9-point magnitude earthquake. So to answer someone's questions about what's going on right now, me personally, what I look for is a change from the normal typical behavior of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. And I am beginning to see it. I do not look at necessarily the clusters of tremors, which have happened on regular intervals. What I look for is the change of the interval period. So when someone posts the little red dots of the tremors, Cascadia Subduction Zone, those are not earthquakes. So I'll explain. We have the continental plate, and as we rise to the center of the continental plate, it gets thicker, the crust gets thicker, and so this is the coastline. Then we have the Pacific Ocean plate sliding underneath, subducting underneath the North American plate. Cascadia Subduction Zone, one of the most dangerous faults in the world, one of. So as it subducts or slides underneath, you'll get vibrations. And those are the tremors. Now, those are down anywhere between 25 and 45 kilometers deep. You do not feel them, even though a magnitude is assigned to them at 0.1 to 1.5 on average. So you don't feel them. Your pets might, but you don't feel them. So when you see clusters of little red dots at somebody you post, don't panic, okay? That's part of the normal process. What we are concerned about. Now, these happen in intervals. So North Cascadia, which is basically Vancouver Island, Victoria, Seattle, around there, would normally happen every 14 months. South Cascadia, which is Medford, Oregon to northern part of California, Redford, those used to happen every 22 months. The intervals are now shortening. But me personally, I need to see something else before I start raising an eyebrow. This is my second video on the subject. So slow slip events are also called, or episodic slow slip events, are also called slow earthquakes. Now these events last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And it releases the equivalent of a magnitude 7 earthquake. Now, these slow slip events normally would release that accumulated energy offshore in the ocean on the fracture zones. We like that. We like to see that. Yes, we like to see earthquakes there. Mendocino Ridge, Blanket Fracture Zone. Better to relieve the built-up stress and energy offshore. We don't like to see the earthquakes such as they're beginning to migrate on land now. So I'll show you. So the Cascadia Subduction Zone plates actually consist of 3 plates joined together, starting from the south from Petrolia, California. We have the Gorda plate, Mendocino Fracture Zone, Gorda Ridge. We have the much larger main Juan de Fuca plate, connected to the north to the Explorer plate. So the total length of the Cascadia Subduction Zone is Northern California all the way to past the northern tip of Vancouver Island. So these are our tremors as monitored by the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. So I'm going to show you just one example here. So this would be Medford area, Oregon. We have a grouping of tremors. This was a couple of days ago, 24th. Okay, so don't be worried about these. This is a standard location. If these continue here for X number of days, let's say 3-4 days plus, we will have a release of that pressure and that energy right here on this fracture zone. Common for magnitude 2, 3s, and 4s. Once we get into the 5 range, then we start to get a little bit concerning. So we like to see our earthquakes release of the energy here, not here. So once again, the Cascadia Subduction Zone is Mendocino Ridge, Petrolia, California. This is the Gorda Plate, Wanda Fuca Plate. And then here is the Explorer Plate. So again, it's favorable that when we have our release of our energy, we have our earthquakes along the fracture zone. However, the change now is we are now seeing groupings of earthquakes here, here, especially Puget Sound, Olympic Peninsula, Seattle, and around Portland. This is the change that gets my attention. While I'm on this picture here, someone asked, well, would that affect Yellowstone? No, it wouldn't. Yellowstone is on a separate system. So this area here is called the Cascadia Range. All our volcanoes. The plate interface, which is the gap between the Wanda Fuca Plate, or pardon me, the Pacific Plate, Wanda Fuca Plate, and the North American Plate. This is where our tremors are taking place. This is also where we can have a release of heat and magma into the volcanoes. So about 3 weeks ago or so, there started to be a change in earthquakes migrating on land, or at least starting on land. What started off the British Columbia coast due north of Powell River started off with a 4.9 and then an earthquake swarm afterwards. It's also a volcanic region. Now today, in the Squamish area, we have a series of earthquakes. Now this is also on the edge of the Garibaldi volcanic field area, but it's over the subduction zone. Next, there's been a subtle increase in earthquakes around the Seattle area, Puget Sound, Olympic Peninsula, and offshore Olympic Peninsula. Quite a few seismic events are now starting to pick up the Seattle area. Continuing further south, there's been a gradual increase, out of place, earthquakes, Portland area, including on the continental shelf offshore, nowhere near any fracture zones. Yes, I heard about the report of leaking steam, hot steam from the ground. Geology Hub did a video on that. He covered that and he says it was a broken steam pipe. Question is, what would cause the broken steam pipe if it was a steam pipe? And then nothing too abnormal in the south end. There was a sizable earthquake on the middle of the Gorda Plate off the coast of California. In the middle of the plate, not on the fracture zone, which again gets a little bit of attention. So it is these changes now in the manner and location of earthquakes, shallow earthquakes. Well, I think that answers pretty well most of the questions I've come across. About 2 years ago, I actually went through 10 years worth of every single tremor event and every single earthquake of magnitude 4 and above along the Cascadia Subduction Zone, looking for a pattern. And you know what? There isn't. Earthquakes sometimes happen after a tremor event. Sometimes they happen before a tremor event. So to give you one example, in 2018, December, North Cascadia, south end of Vancouver Island, on a single day, there were 1,272 tremors. I took a screenshot of that. suspiciously disappeared from my Facebook and phone. And they altered the data on the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. Anyway, 1,272 tremors on a single day. Nothing happened. You can't go by tremors alone. What you need to go by is the time interval between tremor events. One here, 14 months later. One here, 11 months later. One here, 9 months later, and so on. And that gap has been closing. But it's these earthquakes that gets my attention. So they did a study, and they estimated that the average time of these events is every 240 years. There's other documentation that say otherwise 300 years. So they look at sediment examples, and basically every 240 years. So we are 324 years, so we're a little bit past due, I would say. That's about it. Someone in Vancouver Island asked me if it's safe in Vancouver Island. West Coast, no. East Coast, find your route to Mount Washington, the highest point. If you're stuck on Vancouver Island, pre-plan out your route. I can't remember the name of the highway, Highway 4. And take a drive. See how long it takes to get to the top of Mount Washington. Anyway, it's Mount Washington, Vancouver Island, not Washington State. That's it for now.